Hi, I'm Sandi Genovese, and today we are making a Valentine flip book. I've never done one of these. I mean, I've made them since I was in college, but I've never tried to share with somebody else how to make it. So we'll learn together just how well I can convey how fun it is to make and how really fun it is to receive. Here you can see that I've just done like one of the pages, and I've used one of the inside pages and highlighted it to create a cover, which is really like a belly band. When it's open from both sides, this is really just a notepad, and I use the little finger hole here to make it easy to slide it out. This one was from when I was in college, so bear in mind it's horrible, but you're going to draw, and I usually keep this page separate. I don't usually leave it as part of the flip book, but I call them mini movies. The first page would show somebody how it works, and if I turn it, I'm going to see if I can turn so you can see. When you flip the pages, you'll get to see the animation. So you get the idea. Flipping the pages at that angle so that I can see it and the camera can see it at the same time is a little tricky. But basically what you're doing, starting with a dot, building a heart. The heart is separating into two, going out to the sides and coming back to make one. And then from that one, I have it now moved it off to the corner so that this arrow over in this corner can come around, form a loop, like, oops, you can see he's doing loop all the way around, and then go back, pierce through the heart, come out the other side, and then now the heart moves back to the middle and it grows. Really lopsided hearts way before die cuts. Here you can see the hearts are going to stay one size, and now the little cherub is going to come from down below, move his way up, grab the shade, and pull down the shade, which leaves or reads the Happy Valentine's Day message. So it just goes gradually until it's one whole message. In order to do this, you have several choices, and I thought I would share with you. You can get, like I did, a notepad. This one has 220 pages if you're really adventurous. And the beauty of the notepads is that the paper is really thin, and it's really simple to see through. So if I took the little cherub that I drew and I place him behind, and then I press the paper down, you can see. And if I'll show you how you can use a light box as well if you want to, in order to see through, in order to repeat that drawing. So notepads work well. You can also, I noticed that Staples carries these. This is heavier cardstock, and they've got the back side have lines on it, but you could cut regular paper and do the same thing. Just punch a 1/4-inch hole in the same place, bind it with any kind of, a bird leg band or any of these metal notebook clips, and then the person can flip through the pages just as easily. But now you can open this up, and now you have loose pages to draw each of them separately, which might be the simplest way to start. Another option is to this is the way that I do most of mine. You just buy a sketchbook. This one has 110 pages, and we're going to start at the back. So you're going to draw the first one and then lay it down, and you can see through well enough. If you use simple images like I have, hearts and arrows, something that's, as long as you can see where the last one was, it's not difficult to draw the next one. And then I'll show you what I did when we get to the very end to the cherub. So this is with just like a faux leather cover, and here is one with a fabric cover, but all kinds of choices. And it's really sort of up to you as to what works best for you. We are going to work today, like I said, with a notepad. Another option, if you use the loose pages like I have here, and you want it to look like a notebook when it's done, you can get padding compound. You can get it online, or a lot of stationery stores, if you can still find a stationery store, carry padding compound. it looks very much like white glue, but what the difference, and it even says adhesive for binding pads and books, and it says translucent white and flexible when dry. It looks just like white glue and it dries clear like white glue, but when you paint it on the edge, if you ever were using it as a real notepad and you wanted to peel the pages off, it's not brittle, it's flexible. So you're able to peel each page off and create an actual notepad. So that's an option as well. We're just going to use a store-bought Staples and Office Depot and Target. They carry packages of, I think this was in a package of like 8 notepads. Very inexpensive, all the same size, and all look just like this. We're just going to use the one today. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, I always start by leaving a few blank pages, because at first I only used one blank page, but it takes a little while to get the animation sort of started. So in this example, I think I'm going to leave 3 blank pages. And I'm going to use a Sakura pen, because if I go back and I color it in later, the ink in this pen, once it's dry, once you let it set up for an hour or two, when you go back and color, it won't bleed. So I'm going to take, and if you look at my finished one, and you look at once this heart is up to size and it starts to separate, it's roughly this size. So I've just taken a heart punch and I've used the heart to punch out the heart out of cardstock, and I'm going to use this. I've marked what is the middle. So if this pencil line is aligned with the edge and the bottom is aligned with the bottom, that's going to be the middle. So if I open this up and I leave the first couple pages, I think that's the first, well, the first 2. So this is what would be page number 3. I'm going to put this down, line this up, and then in the middle, I'm going to just draw my first little heart, which is so little, you're not even going to really be able to tell it's a heart. Then I'm going to set this down to the next page. And see how you can see where it was? You can just draw it, which is usually what I do. But you can also use your guide again, and this time, especially drawing upside down, I'm going to draw a slightly bigger heart. And then I'm going to let the next page down, set this as my guide, and draw my heart a little bigger still. Next page. The process is just going to continue until I get to the size of this punched out heart. So this is almost as big as the punch, not quite. Pretty lopsided, but you'd hardly notice. Okay, then this one I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the cardboard as my guide to actually draw this heart. So it's much more obvious once it's colored in, but look at how you've started to build your little beginning animation. Okay, so at this point now I'm going to separate them. So I would go ahead and leave one heart. I'm going to move one here, and then gradually have one coming tucked out from behind it. And I think maybe the easiest thing is to go back to the one here so you can see. Once it's colored in, see how I've now, that one heart has separated and there's just a pink one behind it. So, and see how now they've separated a little further, and they're going to just keep moving all the way out to the edges. You would just keep using your guides, and once again you're going to be able to lay the page down and see. You can even see through here the page before, so you can see that you're going to want to just keep moving it. Once you go all the way up to the edges, then you're going to move them back in gradually so that eventually the pink is back behind again. But notice, instead of going back to the middle, what I've done is I've gone to this edge. And that's because I want to start building the arrow. If you look over here, you almost could miss it, but here is this little arrow. And if I go page by page, you can see I've just moving that arrow a little bit. You could do the same thing. You could draw a little arrow on your paper and you could lay it down and just keep moving it around. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to take a little piece of this vellum, and I'm going to take the arrow and my Sakura pen, and I'm going to go ahead and draw. Of course, I have this little guy really tiny. You don't have to draw it maybe quite this small, but so here is the arrow that, if you pretend like I have the heart, let's go back to the one that's the larger size, wherever that one is. Okay, so let's pretend like this is where this is going to go. So on this page, I'm going to have the arrow drawn, you can see like that. And then the next page, I'm going to move this to this position and draw it. And then the next page, I'm going to move it here and draw it. And then the next page, I'm going to move it like this and draw it. So it's going to flip all the way around, just like you see happening here. So each page, that arrow is moving a little further in. See how it's now starting to arc? So once again, you're just taking the little guy that I just drew, and on the page before, you're just laying it down and moving it into these positions. So now, see how it's starting to curl? He's curling all the way around, making a full circle. The heart over here doesn't change, so you're going to use this little pattern to just keep drawing the same heart in the same position and just coloring it red. So now it's going to, when it gets to this position, this is where you're going to need the heart to change just a little bit, because he has to look like he's piercing. So you're going to leave a little gap and draw and have him going all the way into the middle. See how now he's starting to disappear and all you see is the tail end. Now you just see the tip, if you even notice the tip. Now it shows a little more. So you get to this section and you're going to want to make sure that you don't have all those hearts drawn all the way in until you put the arrow in there. And as I flip through the rest of these pages, see how the arrow is just now going right off the edge of the page. At this point, I need this heart to get larger. So I'm going to gradually move him back and I'm going to make him bigger. Here's where I took and I made a larger pattern. So this heart is going to get gradually bigger until, lopsided and funky looking as it is, at this point it is now about the right size for the little cherub. So I would use, now that die cuts are around, I would use this. And from this point on, I'm going to draw the same big heart in the same position on all of these pages, because the heart is no longer moving. It's now the cherub. And see, if you've drawn him, all you need to do, let's just take, and I'll show you on this. I'm going to pull off one of these pages, and let's say that this is my heart. And I've gone ahead and I've drawn maybe 10 or 15 of them. Oops. So there's that. Now I'm going to take the cherub, and here is the whole thing. I'm going to put it behind, and I'm just going to draw little hearts for his hair. And then I'm going to move him up, and I'm going to draw a little more of his face. And I'm going to move him up and draw a little more. So I just keep moving him so you can see through until he's going to go all the way up from behind. And eventually, when his hand disappears, that's when you're going to stop. And then he'll come back down, and this time he'll be holding the shade. And so when I go to back to this guy, you can see where that starts. So he's traveling up and up and up. See how his hand isn't quite all the way to the top yet? Now it's up there. So he's going to start coming back down. See how now he has the little shade and a little bit more. And each time you see a little of the Happy Valentine message. So now he's disappearing out of the heart again. and what is showing is the message. And it would be nicer if I had put something behind and traced it, but I just was handwriting it, so it's crooked and funky and wonky, but you do get the idea of how this works. If, when it comes to the cherub or anything that involved, you're uncomfortable, you can use a light box. And I have one. This is so old. I kind of forgot I had it, but there's a light in here. You can see just sort of an oblong light bulb. And when I turn this on, it illuminates whatever you place here, and it works better with the lights off. So we're going to turn the lights down just a little bit so that I can get it. It's not very dark, but you can see how it's really pretty easy to see that cherub. So now if I show you, you're going to draw that part of him, and on the next page this much, and on the next page this much, the next page this much, till eventually you're going to have his hand go all the way up, and then you're going to draw it back coming this way, and now you're going to have the shade spell out your message. I know it maybe sounds involved. It is a labor of love. I've made these as birthday presents for very special friends and Valentine's as well. I'm going to turn the lights back up, but because I want to show you, once you have the flip book finished, then it's time to look at the cover. And this one I made to fit over this really old cover, but I'm going to show you now to make the cover for the one that we just looked at. If you take and consider it a belly band, but it's the full length of the notepad. So I've just taken red paper and I'm using the notepad itself as my guide to see where to fold it. And I'm going to take adhesive. There's a little edge that overlaps, and I don't want that edge really to show. So I'm going to put the flap on the inside, and I'm going to go ahead and overlap this. So this is going to create the belly band. Before I fasten the design on there, I'm going to, I think it's easiest for me anyway, with a little finger hole. So what I did is I took just a small circle punch. You can measure if you want. I just sort of figured out when it looks like it's about in the center. And I'm going to arc this so that I can get my punch in there. And when it's about in the middle, I'm going to punch out a chunk like so. And then I'll use that as my guide so that I can draw with the pencil where I want the back one to be. So you can see now I've got a little pencil mark to follow, and I'm going to now do the same thing with what will be the back page. So when I have, hopefully you can see that, when I have the pencil aligned, I'll go ahead and punch that out. Now I have the finger holes, which just make it easier. I'm going to go ahead and slide the notepad in. If you've used it so much that it wants the padding compound seems a little loose, just like, see how it's kind of starting to come loose? Just take binder clips like this. This is after your whole thing is finished. So it holds it tight. Take your padding compound, I won't bother to open it, and just a regular paintbrush. Paint on more layers. You can let it dry in about an hour. Paint on another layer. It's the padding compound, works beautifully. I've made all kinds of notepads. So once you have this inside, then just the decoration. And I just pick one of the pages from inside the book and go ahead and draw it. You can see that I've gone back and I've just used, I think I even had them sitting here. I used, here they are, a flesh color and a red. Marvy is my favorite of the markers. Once again, be sure that you've drawn with a Sakura so that when you color, the black isn't going to want to bleed. And go ahead and color it in, and then layer it on top, in this case, of a little bit of pink that's also going to sit here. And the whole thing is attached, even though it's a different size and I haven't colored it all in. You can see how it's going to work. Now these are ones that I created, as I said, a really long time ago when I was in college as Valentines. Over the years, I've created lots and lots more. Of course, All the good ones I gave away. I only have the ones I didn't use because I didn't like them so much, but it's worth at least showing you. This one has a belly band that slides sideways, but either way, it still works. And like I said, I oftentimes have the one that shows the person what they're going to do loose. If you don't want the first page just to be a dot, then you need to start with them so they go this way. So if I start this one was for a birthday. So it starts off with a cannon, and the cannon is being lit and a star is coming out and exploding. It dissolves to the circle that becomes a clock, and the hands on the clock to show the passing of time. That circle gets tiny. Now it grows back. Notice that I pretty much liked how those hearts worked, so that I repeated that heart process. The heart gets larger. An older gentleman, I think this was one I was making for my dad, came up and pulls down the shade that says the end. So there's an example of one that's more birthday themed. And then I actually dated this. This was my Christmas card in 1985. So this, once again, I have the belly band that slides sideways. I have the little drawing that shows people how it's going to work. And this time it actually works the other way. I am going to go this direction. So I'm going to start this way. This is just a thin notepad. And this is one that I actually did on a sheet. If you look closely, you can even see some of the lines. So I cut them all apart later and then put the padding notepad on at the end. But you can see that it's a little short Christmas message. That star is going to flip around. He's going to land on the tree. He goes up. So the star is pulling down the shade that says ho, ho, ho. You know, a Valentine flip book is so much fun to play with. Your friends and family will actually flip over it.